Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Millennials. Today, I have a very special guest, Alina, co-founder of Chili Piper, one of my favorite brands out there. A little backstory: I used to use Chili Piper probably in every job I went, but I remember when Chili Piper was a small brand, and you guys used to come to offices and show us the product. And this was back in Snack Nation, way back in the day, probably 7 years ago. And now you exploded. So I'm excited to chat about your growth and chat about how you've built your brand. But welcome to the podcast.
So exciting to see our paths grow alongside in the past 8 years. So much has changed, and yet so much has remained the same.
It's super exciting. I want to go into your background. I know you were a CMO. You're co-founder of Chili Piper, obviously. You were CMO for the last 14 months until you brought on a marketing person, but also talk about just your quick background, and then we'll go into what we're talking about today.
I don't have a background in marketing. I have a background in engineering. So I'm the technical co-founder at Chili Piper, and Chili Piper is my first company. Before that, I worked for many organizations in many different industries. I did health tech, finance, ed tech, media, and my skills and my strong claim to fame was building products that would get a lot of engagement. And I managed to do it again and again, getting for my first product had 30 million users when I worked for Thomson Reuters. And I got to get some of my products on stage, keynoted by Steve Jobs. And my husband kept saying, well, you should use this talent to build something yourself. You should use this talent to build something for yourself. And I didn't get the courage to do it until I felt like I had this strong conviction of building a product that I knew to build better. And that realization came to me at some point when I was working for a publicly traded company, where I was seeing enterprise software built by teams who were just going through requirements and a list of requirements from users. And if you ever used tools like SAP or Oracle, you know that you want to do something better. So that's when I got the impetus to try it on my own. The way I started was by talking to revenue leaders to see how I can solve their problems. I would go to a lot of events, trying to understand what they really need. I was a salesperson myself at some point as well. It was exciting for me to build tools for revenue teams, but I didn't feel like I was truly getting their pain until I was one myself. That's when the most learning happened.
Yeah, I feel like until you experience the problem, it's so much harder to understand what to do. But building a company, you automatically have to do rev ops and marketing ops and everything when you're starting. So you have to do it. So you've been in the weeds. And one thing I know this is going a little off script of what we're going to talk about, but you were talking about how to create products that get engagement. And one of those things is why brands are so amazing is like, to have a great brand, you have to have a great product. Otherwise, it's hard to have both because you need people to speak about it. How did you approach that with Chili Piper? What is your approach to create a product that gets more engagement?
So the company that I worked for before, something interesting, I've observed myself getting good traction from the beginning by me understanding the users through spending a lot of time in their communities, spending a lot of time with them in real life. So I was assimilating as much as I could by spending as much time with them, but I'd never been one of them. So even though for Thomson Reuters, I built this app that got 30 million users, I was not a big consumption of, I was not a big on financial news myself. So I wasn't like myself, the persona. Even for Bloomberg, I wasn't the persona myself, for Pearson, for all these companies. But there was one key that I observed again and again is that when you start with a product that has a brand behind it. So in the case I did work for these brands, people are more likely to try to explore the app at the beginning, but you have to make sure that they actually stay, because there's no point in having like 30 million users at the beginning if they don't really stay. So the engagement on these apps is critical. And I found that you have to look at a couple of things. One is impress people when they try your app immediately. Like, you're going to get one first impression and you better wow them, because otherwise you're going to lose them. You're not going to get a second chance. Then second, give them a reason to come back through smart either notifications or things that they can immediately understand the value from coming back. And third, find little sparkles in their journey to create emotions of joy. And this could be very simple things around the user experience, or around the way you talk to them, or the images that you show, because people don't really. So obviously you have to give them value, and that's essential. But you also want to have them remember that emotion that gets experience when they first try your app, and that experience is so important around emotions. Is so critical. So I paid always a lot of attention to that, and it was the same thing that I took upon myself when we started Chili Piper.
Yeah, because one thing for people who haven't used Chili Piper, the one thing that I see, I mean, I'll talk about from the beginning and through my experience, but the one thing is, one, it's super easy to use, whether you're a marketing ops person or a head of marketing. Anybody really could use the product. And two, it's easy to get started with the product. It's not like you talked about Oracle and SAP and Salesforce. Those products, the onboarding and implementation and all that stuff takes months and months and months. And you still need someone always in the product to make sure you're doing well. And second, from the beginning, we always had someone on your team who was an expert at the product, that if I said, hey, I have this problem, even if you didn't have the solution, they would help problem solve it for our company. So I think having great UI experience, ease to use, and customer service, you had like the three main things that made me as a user make the experience so easy for me that I didn't have to think about, hey, I need to go into Chili Piper. And even if I thought it wasn't going to work, I knew I had a contact that would be on my side from the beginning.
It's so much has changed since you have last used us. We changed the onboarding completely so that things are even more obvious and you need even less human touch. It feels a lot more delightful. In the early days, we couldn't quite figure out how to make that complexity work fully for everybody, but we worked 4 years. 4 years on figuring out the self-service part, and we just launched it maybe 26 days ago. Yeah, 26 days ago. It's been a roller coaster, because the complexity in enterprise is it was hard to pull off, because we had all these large orgs using us, and medium size, and then small businesses as well. So figuring out how to unlock all of that was challenging. But sometimes you just have to be patient.
Yeah, I want to change the conversation a little bit, because I know the number one thing that, obviously for a great brand is a great product, but I know Chili Piper's always had a small marketing team. You seem to have built a strong brand, especially in rev ops and marketing ops. What would you attribute that to? What are some things you have been executing for the last 8 years that have built the brand so strong in that community?
There are a couple of components. Obviously, as you say, product is mandatory to make sure that people talk positively about you. Then the other one that you also mentioned yourself is having support by your side that you felt that there was competency around it. So building the right team and bringing the right people on board, that was a critical part. And then associating to bringing the great talent is building also the right culture for people to be happy to be at work. Because Even if you have interacted with one of our employees and they were helpful towards a specific problem, if you'd have felt that something was off, that person wasn't quite happy with where they are, even if they would have not said it, you'd still feel it. And that's something only a founder has a lot more control over than marketing teams. Obviously, with support of marketing teams, that can be calibrated, and with support of people teams, that can be calibrated. But how people come across when you interact with them, whether they're happy or not, you feel it. And you associate the brand with that emotion. Obviously, you can't, as a company, you can't control precisely everybody's emotions and how they feel in a certain place, but you can at least try to do your best to provide the right environment for people. And we do some unusual things at Chili Piper. We always make sure that people work on things that they're excited about if we can. We try to have them delegate the things that they bring them less joy. We continue to be remote, even though everybody calls their teams back to the office. There are pros and cons to that. We keep all our decisions transparent for everybody to see, because that's something that's very frustrating when you see other people making decisions that you don't understand and you don't have visibility over the numbers. And then there's another piece to culture, which is conflict. Most of the time is you quit because you can't stand the coworker or you can't really work well with them or a manager. And that's something that I spend a lot of my time thinking about how to manage as well. And when it comes to marketing, there are a lot of components that we paid a lot of attention to. One of the most important one being to work with people that we knew that were influencers in our space from the beginning. That was my focus from day zero. I wanted to see who in a room commands attention. I would go to every possible event with our persona and see where people would flock their attention to. Even if I would have a speaker or there would be somebody in the room, you observe certain dynamics to see who actually holds the influence of your ICP. And the reason why Snack Nation was one of our early customers, and the reason why we got so much feedback from Snack Nation was because a lot of smart people were working there and they were commanding the room. Like Kevin Dorsey was always someone that people would look up to, you yourself. So we wanted to learn from the best and make sure that the best also use us to create that first ripple effects. Because if someone who commands attention uses you, then the brand is so much stronger. That was on our customer front. Then on our partners front, we would also make sure that we have integrations and syncs or even some perceived integrations with people that were a lot bigger than us, to amplify the way people would see us. So at the beginning, it was SalesLoft. We made sure that Chili Pepper worked so well with SalesLoft that you couldn't deny that it was like the perfect choice if you're already using SalesLoft to use Chili Pepper as well. There's a lot more to that, but I'll stop here because I feel like I've spoken enough.
No, I think that's two gems you just said, because I remember even Emil used to be work at Chili Piper, and he used to work at Snack Nation, and he was running your podcast for a while at Chili Piper. So having people, I think number one thing of like creating good content and marketing, especially in B2B, is expertise. And especially with a small team, you need the people who are running marketing to also execute on those things like content, like ads, like connections with other marketers in the world. So having someone, especially in your space, that understood the pains and needs, but also had influence with other marketers is such a great strategy. Not only for your space, but also for example, if you're not in the marketing space, hiring, and you're like, I worked at Service Titan for a couple years, and we would hire some of our customers as chief evangelists and people to help create content for our marketing team, because they were the experts. We weren't in the field. We never ran a field. We never ran a plumbing company before or electrician company before. So we would bring those people in to help us make better ads, help us make better landing page, help us make better content, talk to our customers in their voice, understand the voice of the customer. And I think that's super important, especially you did that with your marketing team. So I think that's a great way to create great content and also create a narrative in the market that you are the experts in the industry at this certain topic.
1000%. The best writers are your operators. You can still find a good content creator who takes the voice and amplifies it. However, the most knowledge is held by the operators, and they're a lot more credible. So even if you look like our blog posts, the best performing ones are written by someone who actually did the work and just gets some editorial help to amplify it.
So you've talked about a couple of things so far, and I want to get a little deeper in some other things you're doing. So you talked about creating a great internal culture, internal marketing to make sure your team's happy. And when your team's happy, they create better experiences for your customers. You talked about bringing in influential people in the company to be the marketers and be the voice of the customers. You talked about partnering with companies that had influential marketers already inside. So they are using the product. And then you talked about creating integrations with bigger brands like SalesLoft. And I know you have integrations with about every big software now, but creating so it makes your company look better. What are some other things you thought about when building Chili Piper as a brand and a bigger name?
There is something else that I also paid attention from the beginning, which is having the ability to stand for something and have some personality alongside of what content puts out there, because it's very tempting to sound like everybody else, and it's very safe to just sound like everybody else. But these days, you only grab attention if you're a little bit different and if you have strong beliefs on certain topics. So we paid a lot of attention to our values. For instance, I'll give you an example of a value that was kept throughout the tone and the things that we draw attention with, which is have fun. I believe that it's kind of sad to be at work for such a big chunk of our lives and have it be boring and be serious all the time. So whenever, for instance, we have a get-together, since our employees are remote, we get together rarely. We always make sure to make the most out of it and have fun. So we sometimes publish those get-togethers, and sometimes they're a little bit crazy. But we're okay with it because we know that that's one of our values. And yes, we might get criticized because not everybody associates corporate fun with positivity. There's a lot of hating of corporate culture and in general of certain entrepreneurs that seem to waste funds, and then it is what it is. So taking that as a stance has not been easy because you're going to get criticized. And this is one example. I can give you examples of our other values and how you take a strong stance and you get criticized, but you take a risk. And by taking a risk, you have better chance for people to pay attention to you. Paying attention is critical in marketing.
That stands from an outsider perspective and obviously attracted better employees to work for you. I mean, I remember even from the early days, all the yearly retreats posted on that you all did for a long time. And I know probably you got a lot of criticism during the time where budgets were starting to be criticized.
Yeah.
But
oh my gosh, yes.
But it is what it is. I think the other part I wanted to talk about too, that I think you all at Chili Piper did very well for a while is double down on social too. I think a lot of brands didn't do that, but from the beginning, you invested in company pages. I know you now are investing on your own personal brand because I see you posting all the time. I know you have your head of marketing posting all the time. So, and I know your whole marketing team is public on social. So could you talk about a little bit of that strategy of why social was so important, why brands in the B2B space should invest in it, and how it's helped your brand?
It was very interesting because when people would join Chili Piper, I would give them a few tips on how they can be more active themselves. And my biggest challenge was to convince them that it's worth it, because as they were seeing it, it was just some waste of time because they needed to do their job, and posting on social media was not part of the job description. And the way I explain it is that if Chili Pepper ever goes bankrupt or something happens to us, you will need to find a job. And the likelihood of your brand be perceived positively and the ability for you to negotiate a better salary is based on your reputation. And part of your reputation is internal reputation, and another one is external. And if you don't talk about your successes, nobody else does. So you have to learn to speak about your tactics and about the results that you get in a way that is not bashful, but in a way where you teach others and others learn from you. And that's how you build a reputation, and that's how you build a brand. So it took a lot of effort in the early days, but now people are starting to catch on. People understand that it's valuable. At the beginning, it was hard, but now people understand that it's valuable, that they can create a lot more value for themselves and their equity by posting. So it's a lot easier. We don't have guidelines. Like, I don't police anything. Like, they can post anything they want. They can post Alina is a douchebag. I don't have policing around what they get, what posts they have. I'm just hopeful that they can teach some of the tactics that are effective for them, and hopefully that helps the ecosystem.
What you just said there is, I think, what most founders are afraid of, or leaders are afraid of, are that the employees will post something dumb, or they'll post something off brand, or they'll post something not correct or something like that. And I always say, I mean, Amelia Sordell says this too, and I kind of got it from her, but if you're worried about people posting the wrong stuff, you're hiring the wrong people. That's always the filter. If you really worried about people posting the wrong stuff, you're probably hiring the wrong culture fits for your company. That's one thing. But also, I think you as a founder having self-awareness that, hey, we are a startup. We might not make it through the first few years. I care about you as employees, but I also know that if something happens, I don't want you to fall on your feet and have nothing. So create a resume now publicly of what you're doing, what you're building, who you are, so you can have a reputation in the market that's outside of Chili Piper, but inherently that helps Chili Piper as a company because you have these experts posting. It's another distribution channel for Chili Piper having an employee post, but it also creates expertise. And that's, I mean, for me, that's why I think Chili Piper is one of the best in the space, because like Tara, I really respect her as a marketer. Brandon is a great marketer, who's been around. On Emil, who used to work for you, is a great marketer publicly. All these people, I respect their opinion. So I assume they know marketing, and I assume that if I use their product, I'll get advice that's not only how to use the product, but how to use the product as a marketer to increase MQLs or to optimize my flow or whatever I'm trying to do, or increasing conversion rates, whatever I'm trying to do. I think that's key, that you had the self-awareness to not only like be vulnerable enough to say that, hey, we might go under, do this, but also that you knew that's also a positive for your employees to do it as well.
There are two parts of it. One on the fear of people posting silly things or things that don't adhere to the brand. If you're worried about that, you're probably the kind of manager that micromanages, and even in like internally, you're going to be constantly watching over people's shoulders to make sure that they don't make mistakes. I have a different philosophy there. I believe that people learn most from their mistakes, and if they don't make them, they don't learn. I only learned all the things that I've learned so far is because I've banged my head to the wall and I couldn't figure it out. And eventually you bang your head to the wall 1,000 times, you learn. And they're going to post silly things and the market will correct it. Like, they're going to get the right kind of engagement or the right kind of comments that will correct the initial flawed hypothesis. So I believe that the best way to learn is by making mistakes. And I'm a very hands-off type of manager where I let people to figure it out and make their own mistakes, and actually get happy when they make those mistakes, because I know that that's they learn a lot more from that mistake than me telling them ahead of time not to make it. So that's one theory around that fear that some companies have. The second part around companies are abstract. So I've created this company, and I'm obviously very happy with the brand that we created and with the company and the culture and the values. But it's just an abstract concept. It's just an LLC. It's not a person that we have any adherence around it. We provide a working contract where we do the best for both parties. The company earns the capacity to hire and employ as many people, and the person working through this contract learns to create value in this ecosystem, and eventually they learn to be the best version of themselves. And if they do that, then our capacity to hire more people is greater. And I spend a lot of time for people to understand the correlation between their activities, their impact, and their impact in the company, and our ability to then create more positive impact in our ecosystem. Because it's not all about ARR, it's not all about NRR, it's not all about retention and all these financial metrics. There's a lot more that a company can do ethically. We can have a foundation that helps. In our case, we're very strong believers in peace and nonviolence, so we spend a lot of our effort there. But we also want partners to grow. We want our agencies that we work with to grow. We want our partners in co-marketing to grow. We want our integrators to grow. So we really want everybody around us to grow. So we hire these kind of people that have that kind of mindset, and they understand that there's a lot of impact that they can have as an individual. So when they're posting, they are in that mindset. They're not in the, let me boast about my success so that I can show you how I can validate my ego and how well I'm doing. It's about helping others thrive. So it's a very different mindset, and it helps you from that uncomfortableness of social media and how social media can be sometimes in our field.
Yeah, one more question. Actually, two more questions for you. One, I know we talked a little about being scrutinized over the culture things you were doing, but I want to ask it from a different perspective. A lot of brands have been scrutinized over the last year or so in SaaS, and to become more efficient, to become more lean. How have Chili Piper done that and still invested in building brand at the same time? What is your recommendations to people who are?
You're seeing that people see brand as a frivolous expense.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
if you look at all of SaaS, brand, the way they see brand or investing in brand, they think it's a nice to have. They rather invest in activities that paid social. I'm just talking from a SaaS perspective.
Immediate pipeline.
Yeah.
I think that the correction that happened in 2022 that allowed us all to be a lot more efficient is healthy for all businesses, because a lot of incentives are now corrected to the right actions. We're cash positive, so we no longer in that state of panic or cutting every dollar to make sure that we're no longer efficient, because we are in a place of efficiency. And I still spend a lot of my time and our effort, and our team spends a lot of their time and their effort on brand, because we have shown through our metrics that long-term investment yields to results. It might take 6 months or so, but if you're planning for long-term impact, you cannot go wrong with brand. So the way we do that is we monitor our impact on first engagement. So the first time an account hears about us and the time it takes them to take action, it takes a lot of touches, a lot of social media impact, a lot of ads, a lot of sponsorships to get to that action. But we measure it. We make an effort to make sure that we measure that first engagement on our accounts, and it pays off.
Yeah, I think, and I was talking to the head of growth at Apollo, and she said this best, but revenue is a lagging indicator of success, because there's so many things that, especially in SaaS, where it's, am I in this account that I want to eventually become part of it? Especially SaaS, where people are in year-long contracts with people, 3 years, 2 years, 1 year, whatever. you got to stay top of mind until that contract renewal comes up or this comes up. So if you're just tracking revenue as a main source of your marketing efforts, it's actually
Short-sighted.
short-sighted. You have to talk about that first touch. How many touches are in the account? How much of that account am I penetrating? How much of my team know about us or have we actually touched? Those are more of better
Leading
indicators,
indicator.
because if you know that,
Yeah.
then you can do more and more stuff to get them closer to that end goal. But if you don't know that and you're just looking at revenue, it's hard as a brand to
Have control
get that.
over what you
Yeah,
can do.
exactly.
And it's a lot harder than that, because when you're in B2B, it's not one person that buys you, it's a group of people that buy you, and they have to get consensus. And to get consensus, you have to get awareness in that account across multiple personas, and creating the right kind of content for multiple personas is challenging. So I find B2B a beautiful puzzle because of it, because of these group decisions. It's fascinating. It's a fascinating space.
Yeah. Last question I have for you is, what is a marketing hill you would die on?
Right now, in person.
I love that. That's a great answer. I think that's, and it's funny because yeah, you've you've been a remote company for so long that you were remote before remote was cool, and now remote is
Yeah.
cool. Now it's like in person has become cool. I'm not from a working environment, but from my getting so many people are remote now that they don't. For me, I used to go in the office every day. I used to hang out with my marketing friends. I used to hang out with sales. I used to hang out with rep ops. I used to hang out with everybody, and now I don't get any interaction except over Zoom, and people are distracted on Zoom, or they're distracted on what they're doing. So in person is such a great. Most marketers are lonely in their job right now, especially rep ops and marketers, because it's such a specialized role. Like there's not. At most there's one or two people on the rev ops team, or three people. At most there's one or two. One head of demand gen, one head of content, one head of whatever, if you're lucky, and they don't have anybody to talk to because they're the only ones in that role. So in person's become way more important than ever.
Fun fact, so we've been around for almost 9 years now. And when we started Indeed, we were remote, and that was not a thing yet. However, I don't think that we could have started a company, and I don't think we would have grown anywhere if I wasn't on both coasts all the time. I was half the time in New York, half the time on the West Coast, LA, San Francisco, and constantly talking to people in person, because context makes it so that people are a lot more performative, whereas in person you get a lot more details around what makes people take action or not, and they tell you the truth. Soon they don't. I don't know what it is.
No,
So
I
I
mean, there's relaxed environments. Like being on Zoom is not a relaxed environment for someone, but going on a
Because they see
walk to go
themselves
get
maybe.
coffee, going to get a beer after they've talked to. These are they're in relaxed environments for people. Like the best ideas I used to have with my marketing team back in the day is we used to walk and have impromptu meetings and we would just go say, let's get coffee. And then we'd talk about this campaign we're running. And then we were like, oh, that's a great idea. It was never in meetings we had with people. It was always when we were relaxed and in a
Serendipity.
room, and it was impromptu, and there wasn't pressure around coming up with an
Stress.
answer. Yeah. I think Zoom just creates this inherent stress that you have to perform. Like you said before, you have to be on it. You have to be at work, where if you're even in an office back in the day, it was like you can walk around, you could just like go talk about, hey, you don't really get many, hey, like, how was your weekend? Or how's your friend doing? You don't get that as much anymore. Like, it's kind of like, how are you doing? Okay, let's start the meeting. That's how it is now. It's not 10 minutes conversations impromptu about it. What did you do last weekend? Or what's the gossip on your friend back home that you talked about last week? There's none of that anymore. So It's just more relaxed in person.
We lose our humanity, and I think part of it is the fact that we see each other and we're like aware of how our hair looks like and if our t-shirt looks like, and we're just like so focused. Actually, on every Zoom meeting, I turn off my own camera because I can't focus. I feel like I might turn into a mad person if I have myself turned on, and I always take notes because otherwise I'm too I focus too much on self, and it's a bit sad. It's a bit sad that this is happening. So the reality is that even for marketers, the more they spend with their audience in person, especially at happy hours, oh my gosh, happy hours are the best, to learn what your customers really care about and use the right language and make sure that whatever you're doing can move them in the right direction, and repeat yourself 1,000 times. Those are little golden nuggets that help along creating the best brand.
And the last question I have for you is, where can people find you, Chili Piper, and everything else?
I feel very compelled to being on every platform possible, but right now I can only dedicate my attention to one. So I'm only on LinkedIn. Sometimes I post on X, sometimes I post on TikTok because I'm curious. Sometimes I post on Instagram because I'm curious. But I'm mostly on LinkedIn, and I learn a lot on that. And I'm also in person at almost every marketing and revenue event you can think of.
Yeah, Alina, literally, if you go to a marketing conference, you'll probably see Alina there. And she always comes out with this fire outfit, like stands out. It's like I don't remember anybody outfit last year, but I remember you had this like purple and black pants or something like that that were just like
I had half pants.
Yeah,
half pants. That's what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. You're the only person's outfit I remembered. It's like I don't remember anybody else's outfit, but I remember yours.
As marketers, we do whatever we have to do to be bold and in people's eyes of contact. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it, and it was great chatting and great catching up.
Yes, same. Very happy to have chatted to you today.